Tal, welcome to Johnny Gould's Jewish State.
My dream. It's like it was on my bucket list.
No, you're flattering me. And in all seriousness, I've wanted to talk to you since pretty much the start of my podcast campaign in 2018 because you are a prominent name because of what happened to you and what you stand for these days. Tal, you've probably told this story before, but for those of us who don't know this story, please tell us what happened to you.
Okay, but I am gonna do it without passion because it's hard to me for me to keep regurgitating it, but I understand the context is important. Um, so in 2010, end of 2010, uh, when I was guiding in Israel, I'm a tour guide in Israel. Actually, I'm born in Britain, I should say that. And I moved there in the 80s. And I was on a nature trail. I was guiding an American Christian friend in the state of Israel. No, you know, dubious area, disputed territory, so to speak. And beautiful Shabbat day when we were pounced on from behind by two men holding machetes. And I'm struggling with one of them, and I had a little penknife, and I managed to stab him in the nuts. And so, but he was bigger than me, right? So he picks us up, and they got these like foot long serrated blades. And then Jonny, we're just standing there in the most beautiful place, one of the most beautiful places in Israel. It's like there's a canopy of pines, and I can hear the birds chirping and can smell the cyclamens. And we're being held at knife point. And finally, one of them, like he rummages through my backpack and he finds my Israeli ID. And it's one of the old ones. Clearly, I'm Jewish. So at that point, they told me to take off my shoes. They took out my laces. They tied our hands behind our back. They cut up Christine's fleece and gagged us. They took off my Magen David. Now, we're standing side by side, gagged and bound. I'm barefoot. And I'm expecting that they'll take us down through the forest and get in the car or something. And instead of that, they separate us by a couple of meters, push us on our knees. And, I'm a musician, Johnny, and this is like some kind of symphony of monotheism in the forest. They say, the takbir. Christine whimpers, Jesus, save me. And through the vomit behind my gag, I gurgle the eternal Creed Shema Israel, and he stabs me so hard in the back, I fall to my side. He's now leaning on my side. And every time he plunges this machete into me, I can hear my bones crunch. It's again and again and again. And the only thing I know to do is play dead. And I assume people die with their eyes open. So I tried not to move, which was incredibly difficult, obviously. And I kept my eyes open. And I watched in front of me the most unforgettable sight of a Christian woman being hacked to death before my eyes. They leave thinking we're both dead, and they come back, and then they roll me on my back. And now I'm looking up at that canopy, and I can see the sunset, it's the most beautiful colors. And suddenly there's a silhouette of a hand holding this knife. I watch it cover the sun, and then he stabs me in the chest, and I don't flinch, blink, or move, and that misses my heart by 4 millimeters. They leave again, and I have one last commission in life, which is to actually die near where I parked the car so the police can find my body. And a terrible struggle. I try to stand, I fall over, I try again and try again. Nothing hurts anymore. I'm so sleepy, but I know if I sleep, I'm dead. And I said to God, like, give me just one more chance. And I found myself, I was so surprised, I managed to stand. And I turned my back on what's left of my friend. And just step by step, I begin to walk just to find somewhere. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where is east? Where is west? Using all my tour guide stuff about the trees and do they grow at the top of the mountain or the bottom of the mountain. I'm thinking about the people I love, that I'm never going to see them again. I'm imagining an arrangement of two somewhere over the rainbow, piano arrangement in my head. uh, anything to stop me thinking about the mess that Christine Lucan is in. And then I tell you my injuries. She had 18 machete wounds, but I've been saying for years it was 13, and then the police corrected me, the Forensic Institute. So I'll stick to whatever, pick a number. Over 30 broken bones, collapsed lung, dislocated shoulder, broken shoulder blade, crushed sternum, bone splinters in my lungs, snapped ribs, a sliced diaphragm. And in that state, I walked like gag-bound barefoot for over a mile until I found, surprisingly, help, rushed to the hospital. There's the army helicopters. And I always want to say this because we're both Brits, you know, I'm a Brit by origin and I love irony. It's like I can laugh at irony. I'm rushed into Hadassah Hospital and there I am busy dying in the operating theatre. And the last words I heard from one surgeon to another was in Hebrew, it's like, Muhammad, talli tasakin, like, Muhammad, give me the knife, pass me the scalpel. And I say it every time, it was a Muslim surgeon who saved my life. The outcome of this, this first part anyway, is that because I stabbed him in the bowels, right? My shirt was covered in blood. But his blood, there was a little bit of blood on my sleeve, his blood, and the police were able to swap that sample. And that he showed up in the DNA, what do you call it, machine. And the terrorists were apprehended very quickly. And they also confessed to murdering another lady, Netta Blatsorek, 10 months previously. So the rest is not the rest, but in recovery and, you know, terrible, terrible pain and all this. But I'll jump to the legal side of it because in court the judge asked them, but like, why did you murder an American Christian? And they were so nonchalant. They were like shrugged and they were smirking. They said, oh, we thought she was Jewish, just like that. So they were sentenced. One got like 120 years, which is 2 life sentences, one for my friend Christine Lucan and the other for the other woman he'd murdered previously. And they'd done other attempted murders and terrible things. And the other one got life sentence for Christine. By the way, life in Israel is 35 years. It's not life. So he got 35 years and 20 years for my attempted murder. And if you know what, Jonny, I don't care if people don't remember this, what I've just said, but what I want people to know is, as I still have a brother in London, like good people like yourself, your taxpayers' monies that the government take, the British government take, they then give this money to the likes of the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestinian Authority are rewarding the people who attack me, a British Israeli, with a monthly salary. They've had millions from British money. And they also stand, I don't know, I mean, I'm always on my phone looking to see if they're going to be let out in this deal. I have no idea what's going on. So it's injustice upon injustice.
And that is a wicked consequence of this hostage deal, that it creates a potential Sinwar Shalit exchange yet again. What do you think of the hostage deal?
But I think we need to start thinking like Jews again. I think we've lost the complexity and the paradox and the tension that has guided us as a people for thousands of years, right? There was a Holocaust scholar who's said about the Holocaust, like the Jews under the Judenrat in the ghetto, he said it's choiceless. Whatever the Jewish people did, it's choiceless. Whatever they're answerable to the Nazis. And so this is the situation we have here. So what I think doesn't really matter. I think it's a terrible deal, but I also think, I mean, I know I'm the first person to jump up for joy when these hostages come home. No strings attached. So how do we think, what's helpful to me? It's not like this or that. It's this and that. On the one hand, if it's on video, on the one hand, I can feel and I must pursue this rabid injustice. And on the other hand, I have the mercy. I must be around people who are suffering. There's not even a language invented for what they've been going through for 15 months. And that, seeing their suffering, their terrible suffering, and being around people like myself and the injustices of all, one tempers the other and keeps these things in balance.
What do you think in your soul saved you that you can tell this story? Because as you unfolded the drama, and it's a story that you've told again and again and again to the point where you're dispassionate about the most wicked and brutal violence, what saved you? I mean, was it that moment with Hashem that you had in your darkest, most wounded moment, your determination to live, or is your life every day now an accident that they just missed out on killing you? How do you process this, or do you not bother anymore?
Oh no, I do bother, but look, it's a very profound question. Right? A lot of people used to ask me more from the Christian community than the Jewish community, but it'd be like, well, where was God? And I always thought that was like kind of a dumb question, because I could hear the birds, I could smell the pine. So where was God? He was there. I mean, if we see like, nature as some expression of the creator, but God didn't do this, like man did this. So the question isn't like where was God? The question is, if we're going to, you've spoken about God, the book of Genesis, Bereshit, the first question to humanity was from God to Adam, Adam being humanity. And he says, where are you? Like, where are you that you could do this? So I don't attribute my suffering or survival rather to miraculous. Maybe it is, but I'm not going to bother around with that. And also it's difficult for me, considering I was with somebody who was murdered. It's very difficult for me to manage my survivor's guilt if I'm going to go around saying, oh, God saved me for a purpose. But what I can do is be thankful that I've got another day to live, please God. So there wasn't any like, well, now I've been saved and I'm going to do this. It's Jonny, most of my life, I just roll into something and do something else. Just one thing happens after the other. I'm not the kind of person who has dreams and ambition. I mean, I just don't know how the hell I end up in these different places. I feel like Forrest Gump, right? I was like, oh, this is the king of this, and this is the parliament here. And here I'm getting butchered by this person, and here I'm going to speak at a rally, and here it's like, I never plan any of this. It just happens. Does that make sense to you?
Entirely, because I've simply never had a perspective like this from another human being, and I've never had a conversation like this in my life before, and so it is a profound discussion, and one that I'm privileged to be able to ask you really straightforward questions. You've been a peace campaigner. You mentioned Mohammed, give me the scalpel. The surgeon saved your life in hospital. And then October the 7th happened. Is your peace message the one that you've tried to convey before October the 7th and the one after it changed? I mean, how really can you talk about peace at the moment?
Well, my peace campaigning, and I set up with actually a friend of mine. I'll tell you how I got to the peace thing, but I need to explain what peace means. I was never a campaigner for a two-state solution or a political solution. I don't understand politics. I vote for someone different every time, every whim. I'm not a political, I'm not driven by politics. But so my peace campaigning, so to speak, wasn't based on any, I'm so glad it wasn't now in light of what the carnage we've endured. But what it was is I never, when I became a public speaker and spoke to so many different audiences with the Christian community, with a lot of the Christian community, not everyone, I don't want to generalize, but because I was kind of getting back to a little bit of life, and I've got a funny sense of humor, as opposed to sense of humor that's not funny. I don't know what I just said, but people assumed that I must be not bitter because I'd forgiven. And I said, on the contrary, first of all, murder. How can I forgive the murder of Christine Lucan? It's not mine to forgive. In forgiveness, the people who are in the equation of forgiveness are the one who has been wronged and the one who did the wrongdoing. And just at its basic level, I can't vicariously forgive on the behalf of somebody who's no longer around to forgive. And even if, do you know what I mean? It's not mine to forgive. Secondly, they're not at all remorseful. Thirdly, they're not fit to be in society. So I understood that it's also, people talk about, oh, hate, you shouldn't hate, you shouldn't hate. Of course I hate them. I hope they burn in hell. And I hope, if there is such a place, and I hope it's forever and ever, amen. I hate them with a passion. But that passion over the years gets a little tiring. And as I draw back from the time-wise from the event itself, like the lens, right? The long lens, you're drawing back from the lens, and suddenly other things come into the picture. There's other people suffering. So the idea of forgiveness, although I'm still, this deal brings up all kinds of very difficult emotions, but mine is nothing to do with forgiveness. The peace, or my peace, I decided because it's my right, an absolute moral obligation never to forgive those who murder, maim, and rape, ever. I decided I must direct my right to be furious at these people and make sure there's justice, but direct and limit that to the guilty. And that, of course, is the perpetrators. It's the likes of the British government who've been funding these people. It's like the woke world who've been justifying all these kinds of murders. Understand? So when I did a peace thing, when a lot of Muslims saw my social stuff on the media, and they approached me and they said, we are so amazed that you don't blame us all. And I said, well, that's cool, but I do blame your Palestinian Authority, and I blame your education, and I blame the adults who are grooming your children to murder Jews. And I met with one young man, and he said to me, look, I want to change my environment. He lives in a so-called Palestinian refugee camp. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And we chatted. And I said, listen, I can maybe help you, but if you can create an after-school club, an education program that teaches children English, computer skills, with the idea of opening up their world so they won't go around murdering Jews, let's make it a fun educational after-school club. So that's my kind of peace work. We teach these, look, I'm not visual in that they kill him for working with a Jew. So I've never believed in, and I don't know how much more evidence we need, two-state fairy tale Narnia, all right? But I do believe that if that peace, or even workable relations that are perfectly possible with people who recognize the evil in their society.
Which is, again, a very profound and fulsome answer. And as you say, you draw away the long lens from the moment of your near-death experience and the tragedy of your friend Christine draws away. You completely avoid the reality of the sharp focus of the wounds that you live with today, the actual physical wounds. How are you? I mean, when you lift a hand, does it hurt? Are you careful in the cold? I mean, you've got scars on your body, presumably. You haven't healed completely.
No, I like to say with a certain measure of irony, I'm only in pain when I breathe, I do have like just chronic discomfort. Mental scars, obviously, I have to look after myself. I feel I don't like the word healing. I think that so undermines this barbarity. But there is a way of looking and learning and walking with a traumatic event. And it is a time thing. The further you get away, the more people you include into your life, right? I mean, I couldn't go back to being a tour guide, but a few years ago, because I lived in Jerusalem then, I'm very interested in Jewish history. I did some courses and I became a guide and an educator for Yad Vashem, cheer myself up. Let's have some Holocaust stories. But just by seeing these terrible sufferings of other people, that built empathy in me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not, I wish it was, but it's not all about me. It's really not all about me. So what do I say? I say, yeah, I'm in pain, but waking up in pain is better than not waking up at all. Really. And it's like, what does it mean to be a Jew? I'll tell you another thing. I got a tattoo here that shows people. It says, Modani lefanecha, me'el chai v'kayam she'echsata bi et nishmati b'chemla raba emunetecha. The prayer we say every morning, even before we're like, oh, where's my cigarette? Where's my coffee? I give thanks to you. O living an eternal King, because you've restored my soul unto me. Great is your faithfulness. Now, I'm not particularly ultra religious, as you can see, but the values in Judaism are so crucial to me. And so the idea, what it means to be a Jew, Yehudi, it's like, first of all, it comes from the word lodot, right? To be thankful, okay? And it also means to recognize, to be aware. So I recognize and I am aware that I don't have to understand why things happen to me. I recognize and I'm aware that I have, I can be thankful for so many good things in my life. I mean, this bad thing happened to me, but what happened to me is not who I am, it's what happened to me. And lots of other things have happened to me. All right. And that's why, I mean, I know we talked about this before the interview, but it is really important to me because I did legally change my name from Kay Wilson to Tal Hartuv because the name change, look, before the attack, I was like fun-loving, tour guide, musician. I mean, all that world was gone. It was shattered. There was the years of recovery. And then when I started on the speaking scene, understandably, but I used to get introduced as a victim of terror. And victim, even if I say that word now, it makes my skin crawl, absolutely crawl. I was a victim of terror. But I'm such a, anyway, independent person, right? The idea that I was a victim, and there were years I couldn't wash myself. I couldn't stoop down to go to the bathroom, like really humiliating, shaming stuff. And I didn't want to be shackled in perpetual victimhood. So then I changed the narrative. And it's like, yeah, I'm a survivor. The survivor, I don't know, Xena, the warrior princess. I'm a survivor. Okay, but that's not all I am. And so my whole identity as Kay was built around this one event. And also, then you're a public figure. You're famous. That's great. I didn't ask for that. I didn't want that. I like bird watching, Jonny. That's me. I want to be in the quiet and the nature. So I decided it's time for a renaissance, a rebirth. I have to rethink my life, see what I can do. It's going to be different. And that's when I changed my name to Tal. And it's become very, very important to me that's who I am. I'm not denying that was Kay, or in a sense am, but I'm not Kay anymore. I'm Tal Hartuv. And even the word Tal, it's the dew of the morning. And I chose that word because it's 3 letters in English, like Kay. I love it. It's a biblical word. It's a modern Hebrew word. But to me, it's also, if you think of the land of Israel, we would not be able to survive without that dew of the morning. All right. It nourishes the land. It's not a place where we get a lot of rain. And that's been the same for me. I haven't seen the flash and my life pass before my eyes. God never showed up and said, chill out, I got this. Nothing like that. But the creator factor, the progress in my life is due to the little things like the towel. It's the phone call, it's the giggle, it's saying, hey, you want a beer? It's shall we go bird watching? It's getting me out of myself and finding some compassion for other people. Why did we talk about that? I have no idea, but I thought it was kind of interesting.
It's a fantastic answer. And I wanted to, as you're unfolding your stream of consciousness, actually say to you, yes, of course, there was the Kate Wilson before the attack and there's the Tal Hartuv after it. But actually the core of you is the same.
Yeah.
The intellect, the thought system that you have created, albeit out of something you hadn't experienced until that time, actually was within you. You were a tour guide. You had a capacity for understanding and appreciating the world. This has just added a dimension. What I think, Tal, perhaps, I don't know you very well, but from hearing the way you talk, actually, you're approximately the same person inside.
Sorry, is it right if I vape?
It's all right. It's on Zoom. I didn't get any.
That is a really interesting observation. Hold that thought. I just want to tell you why I called myself Hartuv as well, because it's very important. Evil never made me cry. It still doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Maybe because it's like you're so savaged by listening to a woman prayer while she's begging to her God, you know. But so evil never made me cry, but kindness, that's, you know, kindness makes me weep. And Hartov literally means mountain of goodness. And it's the goodness that has been heaped upon me. I wanted to take into my name those people who've been good to me, make them part of me. So that get back to your point, like, I think it's a process, all right? Uh, I am the same, but I'm different. It's this and that. What do I mean? I mean, I've always read books. I don't watch much TV. So things like that don't change. All right. I've never tolerated fools lightly. I mean, really never. And I mean, so every habit or characteristic of you, whether good or bad, what happens after terrorism is that's enhanced. Like the bad side, you know, if I'm snappy before, I'm like, going to bite their head off. And I have to temper that. I have to watch my behavior. I want to, you know, I want to be a better person every day. But also with the good things, I actually have always been, I think I am a kind person and a good friend. I do. I know I'm a crap cook, got no sense of fashion, uh, really bored with stupid things. I mean, I have my, you know, I can feel envious about things, but terrorism or terror or trauma, you are the same, but you're just a bigger version of who you are, for good and for bad. For good and for bad. So I'm going to choose the good side, which is, you know what I mean?
I do. And I'm going to ask you about the passions that you had and that you generated as a child and then as a young person before this attack. Did the sort of the world of enjoyment and pastimes and culture sort of close, pass you by? You know, are your interests a little bit more urgent and a bit more serious these days? Or are you trying to get involved in creative and music and all the things that you were involved in before? Can you?
Um, Look, I was always a bit of a geek growing up. You know what I mean? It's like, and then in even high school, I was never the girl who'd go to the pub and the party. Don't get me wrong, I love a great drink. I mean, it's always fun. Nice drink, and good friends. I like that. But I was never like a clubber or this stuff. I just sit there and read books on birds. So I don't think the essence of me in that sense, the passions, this, I tell you what the passion is that's different. It's the passion for justice. My passion for people who've been wronged and violated, that has been enhanced. Like, how dare you re-victimize people? That's when I feel rage inside. All right. Or cancel out the savagery of October the 7th with your, well, what about this or what about that? These people drive me, I can feel my blood pressure growing up. So that change, that like got an extra 10 cc shot every day. But the passions and my interests are the same. And I haven't ever, and I think it's a bit of a shame because it could have been to my favor. But if I'd have been this kind of achiever, you know, oh, I'm going to do this with my life and I'm going to have this career and I'm going to do that. If I might have known rather how to deal with what happened to me to get myself platformed better, right? But I'm just not that kind of person. And so, and there's nothing wrong with being like trying to get a platform, but that's not me. And it's kind of fun. I do get a measure of satisfaction because I've stayed like little old me. And these things, well, less of the old. I did hear you mention your younger self, and I was going to slap you across the screen, but I let you off. The mercy
Thank
came.
you.
But the ethical passions are enhanced. The justice, the need to speak up for you know, these people, these jihad marches basically through London that call upon to globalize the intifada. I tell you, yesterday, Jonny, when I arrived in Luton, somebody picked me up. I won't say who, an Israeli friend, and immediately I speak Hebrew, right? Just say, oh, hey, how are you? Manishma was, and she pulls me over quickly and says, you can't speak Hebrew here in Luton Airport. And I thought about that, and I knew what she was saying, but I gave it a lot of thought overnight. What does that mean? Hopefully this is going to go out to London, this podcast, right? And so I would like to say can or cannot is a matter of ability. I really can. I'm in London now. I can speak Hebrew in London. I mean, I can play the piano in London. I can do it. Listen, read my lips. Am Israel Chai. I just spoke Hebrew in London, right? And I did that in Luton. But what was inferred and implied through no bad intent at all, it was the reality, is these threats. Like, you mustn't speak Hebrew in London because if you do, somebody might hurt you. And I realized I had a real wake up call. Like, what are the Jewish community living here with in London? This is outrageous. And this is part of submission, of stealth jihad, a conquest of culture. And it's like, wow, I can't do this. I can't, like, people, the wonderful Yochi Davis, who's such a fantastic campaigner for everything here. They ripped down the flags of the yellow flags, the hostage posters. It's like, what kind of barbaric society has this turned into? I haven't been in this country for years. This is like London Stan. Outrageous. And
Yeah.
that touches on the ethical response. Like, wow, what on earth is happening to this city?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I hear Ivrit being talked in all sorts of places, and my ear springs up out of well, joy. Really, as opposed to threat,
Yeah.
because obviously I'm not the person who's going to attack them. I thank them, not publicly, but I'm delighted that they're quite happy to speak Ivrit anywhere they want, and I see men wearing yarmulkes, which is great, and largely. People are left alone. I see people with Palestinian flags and think they're useful idiots. And sometimes I confront them, although that's probably not good for my health. But yes, there is a self-censorship, which I think is the last thing one should do. You should just go about your business in a Jewish way or a Greek way or an Italian way or an Irish way, in equal proportion. I'm sorry that you feel like that, but I'm beginning to see that. I grew up with a friend from Birmingham, and he said this to me about 5 years ago. He made Aliyah and he lives in Renana. He's lived there for 20 years. And he said to me, about 5 years ago, I went to Birmingham to see my family. Oh, what a shithole, he said. And I thought, oh, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What are you talking about? And then, of course, I had a trip to Israel, and I went back to Birmingham myself, and I saw the life in Tel Aviv and Renana and Yerushalayim and various other places. And then I did go back to Brum, and it was just, I suppose, the culture shock of going home. It's not a shithole when you live in it, but perhaps when you've just arrived from Renana, it becomes one. So I'm sort of, I've processed that and thought about that, and wonder actually whether, because of that self-censorship and because of what we have allowed and tolerated here, they have become well, I don't want to say the word again, I've said it 3 times already, but maybe it is becoming that, Tal.
Well, I don't listen. First of all, I don't live here, and you would be much more knowledgeable about London as a whole or England as a whole. I should have made it clear, specifically talking about Luton, all right, which was, it was so many Afghanistan people there. They might be very nice, but I'm like looking at the Taliban walking around Luton. So, and also, I don't want to point fingers at the Jewish community here. I really don't. It's incumbent upon leaders of this country and neighbors too, right? Neighbors, that the Christian neighbors or the atheist neighbors or the atheists who live, anybody, any neighbor, it's incumbent Muslim neighbors to make sure that the Jewish community here feel are safe. And it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to make sure that the Muslim people who are against this terrorism, there are very few, what's his name, Raja Mia, who's fighting this a Muslim himself, who's trying to expose the Labour Party, a wonderful man. It's like he says there are many. He says there's quite many Muslims in the community, like they're horrified by these rape gangs, but they are the silent majority. So there has to also be a way where we can, I don't know why I'm going over this way, but where we, or the Jewish community here, or the communities in this country, can like reach out to each other so they can target the jihadists that are riddling the government and calling things and making the Jewish community feel afraid and not speaking up for the Jewish community. Look, it's not just my feelings, Jonny. We have it on Israeli TV all the time. Like if you're traveling to London, there's, especially after October the 7th, it's advised not to do this, it's advised not to do that. If you go to France, and there's jokes in Israel. Well, where can we go? Where is it safe for an Israeli to go? It's always safe in Micronesia. That's the only place that's safe.
Well, I wonder what it's like this time of year. Maybe we'll check it out while we're listening. Tal, what is your message? I mean, to the hostage families. I mean, I've become an addict for the reunion hugs, and
Oh yeah.
I cried mostly when the old man came out and his daughter goes Abba Abba, because I'm an Abba. I'm not 80, but I'm imagining my children coming home and hugging me, and it was really beautiful. And he's a strong old man, that bloke, for sure. No messing with him.
Gangster.
Yeah. What's your message to the hostage families who still are awaiting their loved ones and indeed don't even know whether they're on this earth or not?
Well, I don't have any platitudes, right? I mean, or it's just, I actually took one of the fathers, Ilan Dalal, his son, Guy. I think there's a video of him being brutalized in some Palestinian civilian car, obviously. And I told Ilan, I said, first of all, and I'd say it now to the hostage families, I said, I have no idea what you're going through. I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't even cover it. And when your loved ones, Bezrat Hashem, get out, no strings attached, I will be the first one to come to you and I'll break bread with you and we'll rejoice and we'll weep and we'll hug each other. And then in time, as you've healed or healing, or rather feel better a little bit, not healing. And in time, I know that I won't even have to ask because of the compassion I've shown them. I know that they will come with me to a demonstration that protested against this hostage deal because they will see what it did to me. And that's what brotherhood and sister, that's what the people of Israel are. So it's no strings attached. We're going back to this, what we talked about in the beginning of the interview. It's not this or that, it's this and that. So for their message from me, it would be like, I'm rooting for you all the way. Rooting for you all the way. And what we need to remember with that is that the same people who are, including myself, rejoicing, we're weeping that these people are home. Some of these people weeping and rejoicing, we're going to be at their funerals. God forbid. But it's likely that we will be at some of their funerals because the people who are let out in this deal will now go and murder the people who are celebrating the release of the hostages. It's a choiceless choices. It's a no-win.
Finally, Tal, let's try and bring this round to some hope and optimism. And I think every Israeli and every diaspora Jew who roots for Israel, who loves Israel, acknowledges and sees that Israel is incredibly much stronger than it was on October the 6th in terms of unity, riddled as it was with that ridiculous fight over judicial reform. Here we are, really united together in common purpose. And it's not just about Israel's new consensus, but it's about a Jewish rebirth. All these people saying, oh, I wasn't really bothered with Judaism before, but now look at me. Now look at me davening the Aleinu and things.
All right, so I am hopeful. I think also I'm a born cynic and I'm a realist, but I'm hopeful. And I tell you where I put this hope. Like the parasha on the day I was attacked all those years ago was Vayichi. And in that parasha, um, what's his name? Jacob, who's actually now called Israel.
That's what I was going to say. What's his name? Israel.
Israel. He look, what is he doing? First of all, as Jacob, it says he wrestled with Elohim va'anashim. He wrestled with like with God and men. So Israel is wrestling. Jacob is wrestling with men. Who's men? We're wrestling with these barbarians. We're wrestling with the barbaric moral savages of the West who tie our hand behind our back, as Douglas Murray says, who legitimize and actually authorize and enable this continued terrorism. All right. So these are the men, so to speak, that we're fighting. And who is God? Who are the gods that Jacob, today's Jacob is fighting? We're fighting with ethics. We're fighting with these very weighted, hearty issues of being merciful to the mercy, who need mercy, and to show justice. And it's a struggle to get these emotions sorted out so that we can stand firm and in paradox as we've always done. But when we can do that, and Jonny, you said it, the achva, the unity in Israel, despite all the crap and the government stuff and whatever, people, I see like a renaissance. I see a renaissance of culture, the music coming out of since October the 7th. Oh my gosh, amazing. The local artwork, fantastic. And at the end of that parasha, it's like Jacob prevailed and God called him Israel. That wasn't the parasha, jump to the Vayichie, and it's when finally Jacob, who's been estranged from Joseph for so many years, and he wanted to see his son, and then Joseph turns up with his kids, and Jacob is like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have filalti to ever again see you again, let alone the grandkids. And the English translation of this filalti is so poor. It actually means prayer as well in a hardcore pilalti, mitpalel. But fill in the gap. I would have never dreamed, hoped, expected, anticipated, believed, yearned for, thought it could be possible that this would happen. And that's what faith is, or to me anyway, or prayer. It's like after the carnage of October the 7th, I think in Israel we are saying, who would have believed after all that? Who would have thought, expected, anticipated, hoped for that our people who have been so torn and are still going through such intense emotions, who would have believed that we are reuniting as a people?
A poetic and religious way, spiritual way to finish this interview. Tal Hartuv, thank you very much. It's been a real privilege for me, and I'm sure for every one of our listeners here today on Jonny Gould's Jewish State. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonny. Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai. Wow. Well.